Tim Himes. He's the chairman of the New Democrat Coalition. He sits on the House Intelligence Committee. It's good to see you, sir. Welcome.
Hi, Trish.
So what do you think? What should we be doing right now at the southern border as we watch thousands trying to pour in and thousands more try and seek asylum, hopefully the right way?
Yeah, well, that's exactly the right question to ask. And, I think most people understand that if you've got a problem, probably the smart way to solve the problem is to go to the root cause of that problem. And so, look, I don't get too excited about, whether there are American judges on the Mexican side of the border determining the validity of asylum claims or whether it happens on the other side of the border. The reality is we don't have a national security crisis around asylum seekers. We've never had an act of fatal violence committed by an asylum seeker. Right? These are people who may or may not be fleeing danger and violence in their own countries.
So do you dispute what the administration is saying, sir, about 500 felons among this group?
They're lying about it. They're just flat out lying about the national security threat associated with the caravan.
Security is lying by telling us that there are 500 known felons.
The Department of Homeland Security does not know who is in that caravan. The president, of course, outright lied when he said that there are Middle Easterners in that caravan. And my colleague, by saying that terrorists are sneaking across the border, is also not being honest. Now, look, I'm not saying that a secure border is not important. A secure border is important, but you solve a problem by understanding it. And to get back to my previous point,
I just want to fully understand, because you're making some pretty strong accusations there, saying that Department of Homeland Security and the President of the United States all seem to be in cahoots and want to convince the American people that these are bad people, and that is just, in your view, frankly, a lie. So who is in that group?
No, it's not in my view, right? So the president says that there are scary Middle Easterners, and his government says actually we have no evidence of that.
Do you dispute the intelligence community's gatherings here that have said there are 500 felons and other bad actors?
So I, as a member of the Intelligence Committee, oversee the intelligence community, and no, it is not true that the government knows that there are 500 felons in that caravan. So what is happening here, Trish, and you and I both know this, and by the way, I'm not saying border security isn't important.
Describe to me who is in the caravan.
Trish, I can't do that because I have not actually gone and talked to who's in the caravan, and neither has the Department of Homeland Security. And the notion that the president is not lying, let's just say it, when he says there are Middle Easterners in the caravan, he's lying.
Upset, Representative, that we have some paid informants there in the caravans themselves. I mean, our intelligence has done some gathering, and we have paid people, and that's been a big dispute. I mean, many Democrats don't like the idea that taxpayer dollars are going to actually pay people that become effectively CIA informants, but that is what we have there. And so that's
Trish,
where that intelligence is coming from.
Everything you have just said is not... Look, Trish, part of my job is overseeing the intelligence community, and everything you just said is not true. Democrats, this is not a Democrat or Republican issue. The way we solve this problem, and no, we don't have CIA agents running around inside the caravan. The way we solve this issue is by working with countries like El Salvador and Honduras.
So you don't have any information, no intelligence gathering about who's actually in the group? That seems kind of irresponsible to me, sir.
Not much. Not enough to be able to say with any certainty that there are 500 felons in that group, which nobody is saying. So my point is, if we can get back to what really matters.
No, somebody is saying that. The Department of Homeland Security is saying that. But let's move on from that, because you're saying everybody's just great that wants to come here. So what's your answer? Open up the border?
Trish, did I say did I say everybody's just great who wants to come here? Because now you're lying.
Congressman.
Did I say that?
Who's in the group? Who's in? You said there's no 500 felons. So tell me, everybody good?
Trish,
everybody good?
I do not know who's in the group. The president does not know who's in the group. The real conversation here is about how do we keep... I think what we should do is we should stop these caravans from originating in countries like El Salvador and Honduras. Don't you think that's probably the solution?
I think that's a great idea. I'd like to see places like El Salvador, Honduras, Guatemala do their part, especially since we give them so much in financial aid.
Exactly. So the way to solve this problem is not to scare Americans that there's Middle Easterners or criminals or felons. The way to stop this problem, of course, is to work with El Salvador and Honduras to try to reduce the violence and the gang violence in their countries, which stops people from fleeing.
And Guatemala and help them to prop up their economies. I get it. I see where it's going, right?
This is what we do, right? We help other countries, partly because we're a good country, but we help other countries because we don't want
I
their
don't want you
people
going anywhere because I got much more to talk to you about. So Congressman Hines, I'll see you on the other side of this break. All right, we are back with Congressman Jim Hines from Connecticut. And Congressman, just as we went to commercial, you were telling me that we need to be doing more in places like Guatemala, in places like Honduras, and in Mexico to help those economies so that people don't want to be put in the position of leaving in the first place. We're spending a lot of money in these places as it is. What more do you think we should be doing?
We could be doing a lot more, Trish, to reduce the amount of gang violence and violence generally in these countries. And look, we've got a long tradition, starting with the Marshall Plan back after World War II, of helping countries develop their economy and stability, because at the end of the day, it helps us. So look, we can spend the next 50 years talking about how to deal with caravans and migrants at the border, or we could get at the underlying problem. I think most people understand that it makes sense to try to help solve the underlying problem if you want it to go away.
What about the here and now? I mean, what do you do about the immediate crisis of thousands of people trying to come to the United States?
Well, when you say crisis, of course, illegal border crossings are down year on year. Obviously, we need more secure borders, so don't try to pin wanting open borders on Democrats or on me.
Let me just jump in there, because that's an important thing that you said. You believe that we need more secure borders. Yes?
Absolutely, as pretty much every Democrat does. Our borders need to be secure, no question about that.
So would you work with the president? Would you work with Republicans to try and secure our border there with Mexico?
Of course I would, as would most Democrats. Secure borders are really important. I understand it's important, as you said earlier, to tell the American people that Democrats are for open borders, but that is not true. We understand, just as all Americans do, that we need secure borders.
Because I never actually said that it's somehow important. Listen, here's the deal. You have a crisis right now.
When you were talking to my colleague, you said the Democratic policy is to push for open borders.
You have thousands.
I heard you say it.
Look, I mean, what was the gubernatorial candidate that lost and is on her apology sour grapes tour? Stacey Abrams had talked about allowing illegals to vote. We heard in San Francisco, well, they're actually doing it with the school board there. You're allowed to vote even if you're in this country illegally. And the concern is, as you see your party grow increasingly radical to the left, and I'm not saying you're there. I mean, you're from Connecticut. But it's a concern that part of the goal is to get more people here so that they can get more votes. I'm glad that you're saying that's not in your wheelhouse, and you don't want to do that, and you do want safer borders. So how do you get it done in such a divided environment right now, especially when there's talk of a shutdown? Do you foresee a shutdown of the government as a result of this border crisis?
Well, let me get back to something you said earlier. You said the party is becoming ever more left. We took the majority with 40 seats, picking up seats in places like Kansas, Oklahoma, South Carolina, 3 seats in Virginia. Look, you can run Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who won a deep blue seat in Queens, all you like. The reality is that the House Democratic Caucus picked up seats in purple and red areas, Oklahoma and Kansas, that will actually make for a caucus in the House of Representatives, which is probably more centrist and more pragmatic than it was before, because these people who come out of Oklahoma and Kansas, of course, are not going to be exactly like the people who come out of deep blue districts. So what do? We go back to a place where we were, back in 2013, I guess it was, when you had strong bipartisan support for, yes, more border security, but of course for trying to get at the underlying causes. People come here because they're fleeing violence. Let's see if we can address the violence where they're fleeing. They also come here because where they come from, they might make $2 a day. In a place like Stamford, Connecticut, they can make multiples of that. So let's, really get at the underlying economic causes, meaning let's crack down on contractors and restaurants and cleaning services that are actually hiring the undocumented in the United States. Let's make sure people have a way of proving that they're entitled to work here. If you do those things, you're going to spend a lot less time focusing on what's actually happening at the border, because you'll get at the underlying causes of why people are trying to get into our country.
I don't dispute that. I think that you have to have a comprehensive approach here. But again, I just go back to trying to deal with the sort of immediacy of the situation. And it's certainly a challenging one because you can't just say, okay, everybody come on in. But is shutdown possible over this issue?
Well, I think it'll be interesting to see that. You know, it really is in the president's hands. I mean, the president wasn't in power, of course, when we did have that brief shutdown associated with Ted Cruz and the Affordable Care Act. You know, I heard you say earlier that it's going to tick people off at both parties. If the president of the United States, who already is a historically unpopular president, is seen as causing the inconveniences and other problems associated with the government shutdown, it's going to be a real political problem for him. It won't be the Democrats in the House of Representatives that are shutting down the government. It'll be the president.
Don't worry. There's plenty of blame to go around. Unfortunately, Congress is not very high on anyone's list. But let me just quickly ask you, speaking of that, someone who is trying to position herself again for another big job there is Nancy Pelosi. And it seems as though she's the one in line. Do you agree with having Nancy Pelosi there as Speaker, or do you worry that the party needs new people, new faces in light of the challenges you guys have faced?
Well, look, both are true, right? I mean, you know, we obviously, when the top three people in the House of Representatives are in their late 70s, it would be good for us to have a more diverse group generationally. I mean, if you're my age and younger, and there are plenty of folks younger, you know, you sort of want a more diverse group generationally. But let me tell you this. I mean, the attack on Nancy Pelosi was, prior to the election, that she's such a drag on the electoral prospects of Democrats. You can't win with Nancy Pelosi. Holy smokes, did that criticism turn out to be wrong? Not only did we retake the majority in the House of Representatives, we won in places we'd never imagined we could win, like Oklahoma, like Kansas, like South Carolina. And so the premise that Nancy Pelosi somehow keeps the Democrats from winning, look, you just need to look at what happened 3 weeks ago to know that that is not true.
Mm-hmm. It's a good fundraiser. Anyway, good to see you. Congressman Hines, very good to see you. Thank you for joining the program.